So I'd like to call this meeting to order. We can start out with roll call. Dr. Campbell.
Tammy Campbell, Superintendent.
Danny Peterson.
Jeffrey McAnalloy.
Claire Wilson.
Roscietto.
Now if you please rise for the presentation of the colors for JROTC from Federal Way High School.
Forward. Arch.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. So our first item this evening is the approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of November 24, 2015 as submitted.
I second that motion.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Hear a motion?
President, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of November 24, 2015 as submitted.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item this evening is our good news announcements. And as you can tell by the attendance that this continues to grow, which actually makes me quite happy. So as we call you, if you'll please come forward. Our first recognition this evening is actually a congratulations to the avid students in two Federal Way High School student groups, the Black Student Union and Fuerte Club, and the Thomas S. Jefferson High School's Latina Group Student Union Group, who teamed up to coordinate and facilitate, motivate, inspire, and change event, otherwise known as the Mike Conference, now in its second year. Created by students to encourage their families to learn more about supporting their students' academic journey and learn ways to become more involved, this year's Mike Conference was held on Saturday, November 14th and drew over 230 participants this year. Student organizers for this event were Kyler Pena, if you'll please come forward as I call your name, Victor Sanchez from TJ, and Selma Silva Lacone and Cindy Roman, Amir Goins, and Esmeralda Lopez from Federal Way High School. On another note, my colleague Claire Wilson is graduating member of the Washington State School Directors Association 2015 leadership class. This premier program is for school directors seeking to improve their expertise and leadership capacity with their educational system. Designed to develop proactive, visionary leaders, the program offers directors from across the state an opportunity to work closely together, sharing ideas and experiences throughout a year-long course. Director Wilson, on behalf of the school board and Superintendent Campbell, we applaud your learner stance and your commitment to the professional development. Also, another good news note is that Vice President Wilson is now serving on the board of directors starting in 2016 for WSSDA. So if you come down and please be recognized as well.
It's my turn. Thomas Jefferson High School seniors, Rahama Berta and Jamie Yuck, headed up the 4th annual We Scare Hunger canned food drive. And are they in the house? There they are. Come on up. You may recall this was the rainiest day that Federal Way had ever seen, but together these two women organized approximately 200 of their fellow students from across the district to collect 2,300 pounds of canned foods for the Federal Way Food Bank, again on the rainiest Halloween in recent memory. Rahama and Jamie both participated in We Act overseas work, going to Ghana and Ecuador, respectively. As they told their advisor, Coley Bietenhans, this was their way of giving back locally. And it was an awesome event. And I know we couldn't use electronics because we were afraid that there would be some sparks. And so I know that the school security allowed us to use the mics on the SUV, and you guys just did an awesome job. So thank you so much for helping our community out.
Hi, tonight I have a good news announcement. Over at Olympic View Elementary, they hosted a math bonanza, a competition attracting about 100 students, grades 3 through 5, and from 8 different elementary schools. I don't know if we have James Brown here tonight and Tom Clymer, if they want to come on forward. Give them a hand as they're moving coming forward. James is a high school math teacher, and Tom is a community volunteer, and they teamed up to organize the event. Mr. Brown notes this is a great activity that allows kids to flex their math muscles. We had Sherwood Forest, Olympic View, Nautilus, Valhalla, Adelaide, Meredith Hill, Panther Lake, and Woodmont participating. And some of those schools actually had even more than one team. So fantastic event. Let's give them a hand one more time for the math bonanza. Next up tonight, they're not here, but we still want to honor them. The Federal Way Lions Club. They recently donated dictionaries to Lakeland and Lake Duluth elementary students. The Lions Club has worked together with the Rotary to put dictionaries in the hands of our 3rd and 4th grade students for approximately 10 years now, including bilingual dictionaries for our Sunnycrest dual language program participants. As the program has grown, Lion Nancy Rathy has reached out and brought multiple other Federal Way service organizations on board, ultimately creating a much more sustainable benefit to our kids. A big thanks to Nancy and to all of our community service organizations. Let's give them a hand.
Earlier, I know I saw the principal of the Federal Way Public Academy. Kurt, why don't you come up and bring up your community service club? The Federal Way Public Academy requires all students to complete 10 to 30 hours of community service each year. For nearly 10 years, the students, staff, and families of Federal Way Public Academy have donated a portion of the proceeds from their annual community service carnival to a very special school in Kenya that serves orphans with HIV and AIDS. The Federal Way Public Academy donations have supported the building of a new water well, a new dormitory wing, and purchased school supplies, uniforms, and other things that the children need there. This year's carnival was held on November the 19th. The event was organized by students in the school's community service club and led by advisor Don Dale. So congratulations on the great effort that they provide for the community and for the folks in Kenya.
Give another round of applause. Our next item this evening, actually, why don't we just give them a minute? Those of you, we know you've probably got schoolwork and things to get ready for, and the holidays coming, so feel free to leave if you need to. All right, so our next item on the agenda is our legislative report from Vice President Wilson.
I'm going to make it really quick, and I think the thing that's in the news and that you may be hearing about is the conversation around the reauthorization, the ESEA, better known as No Child Left Behind. And what that does is kind of take back some of those constraints that have been put on the state as far as, and local school districts as far as kind of what they do and how they do it based on the best interest of students or the intent of that, but the impact of that was, I think, something different. And so what we've heard is there's bipartisan support. There was a large signature that passed the ESEA, but what we don't know right now and won't know for a bit is kind of what the details are around that. One of the things that's kind of been elevated within the ESEA is the potential of the loss of federal dollars to support the AP, the pre-AP, the SAT, the ACT, those tests that we've have been supporting our students in for a period of time, because we know that's a strategy to help us overcome our opportunity gap issues, but also access an opportunity for young people to pursue higher ed and their post-secondary endeavors. And so while we're doing a little digging around, there's not enough information around that to actually take any action yet. But as a school board, and I know as a region, are very, very concerned if that does rise to the top, and are prepared to make sure that our congressional delegation understands the importance of those dollars and how much they've meant to not only our district, but I know many districts around us that struggle with funding supports for students, especially those in the gap. So I think that's where I'll end it right now.
Thank you for the update. Next is public comment. So there are blue sheets on the back table if you'd like to make a comment. You have a 3-minute window to do that, but we need you to fill one of these out, please. So our first comment this evening will come from Kelly Tanner.
Hello. Hi, I'm coming to you as a member of this community, as a educational facility planner for school districts, not only locally, regionally, and nationally, but also as a board member for the Citizens for Federal Way Schools. I know that you guys are going to look at the resolution for the 2016 tech levy, and I'm letting you know here, showing my support for that levy. A couple of things that really impressed me about this levy. From what the information that I know, it addresses almost every single issue that consistently goes on with every single school district I've ever dealt with. It's a consistent issue. It's an issue that it seems like it's going to be going on for many, many years, and it's easy to get behind if we're not consistently addressing this issue, looking at the present needs, but also the future needs. And so I really like the elements and the approach that the district is taking on this. Specifically, I like the idea we're talking about equity for student access. We're talking about the idea of looking at our infrastructure and making sure that it's got a strong, solid base, but also that we have digital tools for both students and teachers. But those, to me, are considered the basics, but there's also looking forward to developing these 21st century schools. I always get tickled by that phrase because we're 15 years into 21st century, so I hope by the time we get to the end of the century that we're actually have developed those skills. And I think technology is a great way to do that for us, as long as we look at it as a tool and an avenue for learning. But probably one of the biggest things I look at this is the professional development for educators. I think that that's a continuous, ongoing thing that has to happen, because as technology changes, then our aptitude and our knowledge needs to change with that. One of the other points is, I look at this is a replacement levy, which is very glad to hear that. There's not an additional tax burden, there's not an additional, it's continuation of the 2010 tech levy, which really impresses me. And then the other thing that I saw about this is that I see this levy as addressing the fundamentals of what we need. These aren't a list of wants. We need to be doing these to keep our children progressive and engaged in their learning. Thank you. I hope you approve it. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, our next public comment is coming from Ashley Browning.
Good evening. I'm supporting Decatur High School with our technology and our Flex program. Technology has shifted our way of learning, which made it more personalized. This year I am in 2 blended learning classes, Flex English and Flex History. I am using a school-provided laptop to do assignments and learn material. Flex class is half online and half in class. This helps us by letting us do our assignments and journals online, but do our quizzes on class and paper. One benefit is that if we cannot make class, we do not fall behind. We can access our assignments anywhere as long as we have internet. Last year, I missed 1 day, and it took me a week to catch up. If I were to miss 1 day in a Flex class, it would be easy for me to catch up since it is online, and I can just do the quiz next class. Technology has become more helpful each day. We still learn with a whiteboard and actually take notes on a paper and read from a textbook, but this is why Flex class is so unique. We use a computer and a laptop for half of the class, but we also use a whiteboard, take notes on paper, and read from the textbook. Technology has shifted our learning. It is really helpful when we have to look up world problems or issues, or when we're trying to type an essay and need research materials, but we still use books to help us as well. Please continue to support increased access to technology so that all students can have the same benefits that I have in my Flex class. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next comments come from Brian Kramer.
So I'd like to start off by thanking you all for your public service. I know it's a thankless job sometimes. And then I would like to dive into my concern, which has to do with public engagement in the board. And specifically, I think, well, we could debate the merits of policy governance, and I certainly recognize some of the power that it has to allow you to delegate the day-to-day operations to the superintendent. My concern is that the public is really not being fully engaged right now under the way policy governance is being implemented, in that there is no open forum for the public to bring policy concerns to the district. And in fact, all policy concerns seem like they're being classified as operational, and therefore the bailiwick of the superintendent. No disrespect intended, but that's a lot to do for one person. And so I've done some reading on policy governance recently. I'm new to all of this, but I found an article by John Carver, who is the guy that wrote the book on policy governance, essentially, about how school boards should go about implementing policy governance. And I'd like to share that with you. I've got a printed copy of it with some outlined passages where I think our current implementation of policy governance is really falling short in engagement with the public. And I think, the situation could be improved by providing the public a place and a setting where they can share their policy concerns in an open discussion with the board. Right now, the board is very good about reaching out on specific topics of concern to the board, but there is no easy avenue for the public to take their concerns other than come here and say their piece, which may or may not be acknowledged and may or may not be acted upon. And there is no discussion. It's just, I say what I say, you guys smile and nod, and then the meeting goes on. And, you may do things behind the scenes to address that or not, but there is no discussion, and it's not really transparent to the public. So I think there could be some improvement there. I think that would be a good place to start. I know in Dr. Campbell's recruitment process early on, there was some discussion about how things might change to affect that sort of more prominent public engagement. And certainly, I think everybody wants parents to be involved, the community to be involved, but at the same time, if there's no open dialogue, that seems like it's kind of stymied. So if you don't mind, I'll bring up. It's pretty short. And the highlights are mine, they're not his own. But I just got to highlight.
Thank you. And next will be superintendent comments from Dr. Campbell.
Good evening. I want to provide 2 updates. The first is on my progress on my 100-day entry plan. At this time, I've visited 27 sites so far, with 13 to go before December 17th. During these visits, I am meeting with staff, families, and walking through classrooms with the principals to gain a sense of the quality of the instruction that's happening in classrooms, specifically as it is outlined in the district's instructional framework. We know that teachers that are using the framework as a guide for their practices then they're using those instructional approaches that increase student learning. And I've observed many classrooms in which our teachers are solidly utilizing these practices identified in the CEL 5D framework. The second update I'd like to provide is to follow up on some parent concerns that were shared at the last board meeting. I want to provide an update on school support for schools in the Todd Beamer feeder pattern. As you're aware, the recent developments of more affordable housing across the city, several schools in the Todd Beamer feeder pattern have had a significant jump in enrollment. Rainer View, for example, jumped by 158 students, Todd Beamer by 72, and Sequoia by 78. In analyzing the data from one of the newest multifamily developments, we now know that 70% of the 354 students that were enrolled out of this development, 70% were new students, new to the district. This means our school teams are working to integrate our new student scholars into our schools so they feel a part of the school community and the teaching and learning environment. Last Thursday night, on November 19th, the principal of Todd Beamer, Joni Hall, hosted a community forum with parents, students, and staff to collectively think about how things were going at the school and what might be areas to improve as we continue to transition students into each of our school communities. The Sequoia principal, Springy Yamasaki, who's actually here tonight, hosted a similar forum last night at Sequoia Middle School. These forums are intended to assess how the transition is going from a community standpoint and to simultaneously enlist the community's help in assisting our schools and welcoming our newest students and our families. I want to also add that both events were well attended, and the principals at both sites are framing up next steps that they're going to share back out to the entire community. Finally, with more of these multifamily housing units opening up in the coming months, we anticipate we could have more than 900 more students, with 650 of them being brand new to Federal Way. And we're using this just to base this on the trend of what has happened in the most recent enrollment cycle. As a result, we have convened the principals of Panther Lake, Illahee, Rainier View, and Todd Beamer to discuss lessons learned from the fall, staffing needs, and the professional development that we will provide for the staff at each of these schools so that we're better able to support the additional needs that some of our student scholars are requiring as students enroll in the coming months. So I just wanted to provide a follow-up that we're proactively looking at how we can support the schools going forward. We've had forums to engage our community right now in the local settings where these concerns are rising, and we'll continue to use a proactive approach and do a check-in sometime in the spring. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be school board comments. Director Eto, would you like to start us this evening?
Okay. Since we're going to talk about WSSDA later, I'll just mention that I attended that Motivate, Inspire, Change session at Federal Way High School on a Saturday morning. Saw all the great participation by the students who bring in parents so that the parents can hear the dreams of the students, the needs of the students in terms of support, both at school and at home, and where the parents can fully understand how easy it is to access the different schools, to understand policies, the programs that they have, and get any support that they might need. So it was a really great program that they've got there at Federal Way High School, and it's something that probably the other high schools should look at, because I understand they're the only ones that do this. So it's very different than the night out where the parents come in from the middle schools and figure out what the programs are in high school. It's very targeted toward trying to get parent engagement in the students' progress at school. So I think it's a great program and hope to see it expanded.
Vice President Wilson?
A couple of things. One is on November 12th, we had our second equity convening around educational equity and policy implications, and there were over 250 school board directors, superintendents, and leadership from across our King and Pierce County region coming together for the second convening. The first one itself was really laying a groundwork and providing some history around institutional racism and how educational policy has been shaped to this point. This second one was really focused on creating the conditions that need to exist within districts and communities in order for meaningful educational equity policies to be created. And we are using that, and that will shape the third convening, where I think we hope our outcome will be actual race equity tools or tools and frameworks that individuals are using in the creation of a policy. The focus is not about a cut and paste educational equity policy, because we know it needs to be created by the community and by all members of that community. And so it's really talking about the kinds of conditions that need to exist and partners that need to play a role in that. I just think it will continue to further us in our work in this region around understanding issues related to opportunity gap and what it means to create successful access and opportunity for students. I too spent some time at the Motivate, Inspire, and Change conference at Federal Way High School, and I would say my focus would be the importance of the student voice and how student voice played such a credible role in that it was the students themselves that created that plan and determined that there was a need that they support their families in understanding how best to support them in their long-term college and career goals, which is really exciting as we look at our district, and you'll hear more from WSSDA. We have some incredible student leaders that are showing and sharing themselves. And then the last thing really quickly around the leadership WSSDA, I was part of a cohort this year and would just say that it's a year-long professional learning opportunity with other board directors from across the state. And really the four areas of exploration are leadership, influence, equity, and innovation, and how they all play a role in our educational system and also shaping not only the history, but the legacy that we're leaving as educational leaders across our state. So had an incredible opportunity to speak with many leaders that are currently in our state, but also many that have come before us and have shaped kind of either the good things that are happening or the not so good things happening in our state. So would encourage any of my board directors to the left or right who have an opportunity to take advantage of the next Leadership WSSDA cohort that comes through.
Director Peterson?
Turn on my mic first. How about that? I want to thank those that came tonight and shared during public comment. And Ms. Tanner and Ms. Browning came and shared about the tech levy. We appreciate that feedback. And also, Mr. Kramer, appreciate you coming out tonight. Don't know if I've seen you at a board meeting, but it's good to have you here tonight as well. For me, it's been a great last couple weeks. One of the things I've tried to do while being on the board is try to get out to all the different campuses that we have, the 40 campuses and everything. And for me, it's been a goal at least twice as my time in the last couple of years to go out to different. And so part of my stop this recent trip is I headed on over by Lakeland and went over to Lakeland Elementary, had a great tour over there the other day. It was fun talking to the principal, Ray, over there. And she actually, one of the classrooms I went into is a second grade teacher. And sat in the room for a little bit and was watching the teacher doing a great job. It was really cool what they're doing, had the standard up on the board and just how everything was going. And she says that gal right there, used to be my student for 3 years, and then she went to school, came back to our district, and did her student teaching at Lakeland, and now she is she's a second grade teacher at that school. And it's just really cool to see that whole thing come around. That's what we desire, is to see our students someday come back and reinvest, and that was just an example right there. And really cool. Another one of our schools that is just continuing to see growth. And every year they're just continue to open another classroom, and just what they're doing there it's really cool. And obviously all of our different elementary schools have a different touch to it. That one obviously has the open library there, and it's just cool to see the variety that we have in our different schools. Also was able to stop by Rainier View. Superintendent Campbell talked about that, some of the challenges they're having there, and I just want to encourage any board members to, if you want, go over there and have Principal Cross give you a school tour. He's doing this right now for all the parents of the school. He's opened it up, and it is awesome. It is so cool what they're doing over there. Just with the challenges they're having this year, it's been all hands on deck, and it is amazing to look, just to experience and see what they're doing there. Just really cool. They're busting at the seams, and everybody is engaged, and students are learning. One of the students I got to talk to, a kid that has a lot of challenges. His family doesn't have a house. They don't have an apartment. They live in a hotel. And this student is excelling at math. I mean, just doing phenomenal work at that. And it's just cool. That's his story. That's what's going on in his life. But that's the kind of students we have. Doesn't matter where you come from. We're going to find you. We're going to challenge you. We're going to give you rigorous things to learn. And this kid is just knocking it out of the park. And you would never know. Looking at a classroom, his background, it's phenomenal. Also, too, I was in one of the classrooms, and there was a gentleman that was working with a student, and Principal Cross said, that guy right there, he played in the NBA, I'm like, oh, really? And yeah, he's a former NBA playing on the championship team, Indiana Pacers, and he's one of our educators there, just pouring into students' lives. You would never know it just walking by him, but that's just the kind of caliber and quality of people that we have working in our schools. And just a really cool thing. They're using Class Dojo over there, and you're just seeing the buy-in that students have with that program at that school. It's a great thing. And I think the thing too that I really got when I was there is the support that they're getting from the central office. And they really reiterated just how helpful Dr. Campbell has been, and the ESC, and just really helping with a lot of the transitions this fall. So really great stuff going on at Rainier View. Also was able to stop by Sequoia too, and actually Vince was there while I stopped by, and just another great school that is, the other night they had a forum there, and they're just tackling those challenges as they come, and so really good stuff, and I'm just grateful for that opportunity. I'm hoping to hit a couple more schools here before my time on the board's done, and it amazes me as I continue to travel around the district, just how big we are. Obviously tonight we're in Federal Way City Hall, but who we represent as a board and who we are as a district is so much bigger than that. I mean, we have students and families in Des Moines, we have students and families in Kent, Auburn. It's so broad, the privilege of people we get to serve, and the different types of communities, and the diversity and all those things in between. And it also creates the challenges of just creating communication streams as we're crossing city boundaries and all that kind of stuff. But it's a good thing just to see how the good stuff going on with Federal Way Public Schools. So thank you.
Thank you. So I too got to attend the equity convening. This is my second one. I attended the first one, and I enjoyed my day of spending time to work with the Federal Way team and just talk about where we're at and what we're doing and how we move this issue forward within the district. So I really enjoyed that. I attended the Mike conference as well. This is the second one I attended last year. And it's just very profound in what students can do. When you give students the ability to have voice and do what they would like to do to move things forward, it was amazing the connections that you could see that were happening with the students and their families, their eye-opening experiences as they got to hear in their own home languages, and students speaking to them about what they needed to be successful post-secondary. It was very, very deep, and brought me to tears a couple times, because it just is nice to see those students moving that forward. I also attended Mark Twain and Nautilus the last 2 weeks. I continue to tour my 5 schools in my district and continue to build those relationships and understanding of what they're doing. I got to spend time with the middle school students when I was at Nautilus. Mark Twain, I met with the ELL teams and the principal and talked about what they're doing and how they begin to look at their next steps and what they're going to do as they look at how kids have progressed in the first quarter and what things will move in and out of those 4 stages of what we do with our ELL students. And it's, you know, it's a arduous task that we have to do to make sure we're taking care of students, but it's amazing to see those that are excelling and the things we're doing to make sure they excel. I also attended Sequoia Forum last night as we brought those families together for them to share and to brainstorm about what next steps need to happen to make sure that we're taking care of all as we transition through the changes that Dr. Campbell talked about. I also want to point out that December 2nd, the core team for the strategic plan, over 100 individuals, both internal and external, will meet together on December 2nd from 8:30 to 3:30 to continue that work forward. This will be the 3rd day of 5 that they will meet, and as we continue that work, and it will probably culminate sometime in late April or early May. Please make sure you are on the watch. There will be 5 forums that will happen, 1 in each district, that will happen between the middle of January and early February for input from the community about where we move and those things that are brought forward out of this core team. And at that point, that's all I have to share. There'll be more about WSSDA shortly. So our next item will be our second reading and adoption of the tech levy. Dr. Campbell, introduce the team.
Yes, I'd like to invite Dr. Danny Pfeiffer, Deputy Superintendent, Ron Mayberry, Executive Director of ITS, and Sally McLean, Assistant Superintendent, Finance and Operation. They will be doing the second reading and asking the board for approval of the adoption of the tech levy ballot resolution 2015-20. They will also provide just a brief summary to remind folks what we're focusing on as we go out for this renewal of our tech levy.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Board President McAnally, members of the board, Dr. Campbell. It's our pleasure and honor this evening to provide a final reading of and seek your approval of Resolution 2015-20. Joining me this evening is Mr. Ron Mayberry, Executive Director of Information Technology, and Ms. Sally McLean, Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. The purpose and the goals of the presentation this evening is to seek approval of the tech levy resolution language for the replacement technology levy, to illustrate the connection between the resolution language and the major themes and recommendations that came forth from stakeholder groups, to continue to provide information regarding our past and future impacts, and then to continue to provide information related to the impact of our current investment. A reminder to you is the major themes and recommendations that came forth that were derived from the stakeholders' focus groups, which will serve as a foundation for our future technology levy funding. You heard Kelly Tanner speak about the importance of equitable access for all students, so you'll see that as a major theme, student technology access, and we talk about that. We talk about regardless of where you go to school, our students have equal access to tools and digital resources. The importance of not only keeping teacher devices up to date, but also providing them with robust professional development, highlighting 21st century teaching and learning behaviors so that they can be thoughtful integrators of technology into the classroom. Making certain that we maintain a robust infrastructure. So it's one thing to have our technology replaced, it's another to put tools in hands of students, but if you don't have the infrastructure to support that, it really doesn't matter. So making certain that that is a major theme and a priority. Of course, selecting 2 demonstration sites, K-8 sites, that will serve as professional development sites for our teaching staff. So when we think about increasing access to student technology and also digital resources, also using those sites as an ability to build the capacity of teachers' skills in the area of technology integration and 21st century teaching and learning behaviors. And then make certain that we are committed to equitable distribution of classroom presentation stations, building on our success of doing so of the past.
All right, our next 2 slides are about our current tech levy. We're in the middle of towards the end of a 6-year levy, began in 2011. The last year of collection is our 2016 calendar year. Current amount is $4.4 million per year. And this comes at a cost to our average homeowner of $87.32. There we go. Return on investment. Some of the highlights of how this first 5 years have gone. We've been able to increase our ratio from 8-to-1 in our early goals of those early years to a 4-to-1 ratio, and it's actually better than that, but that's been our goal. We have laptop deployments to staff with a refresh cycle of 3 years now instead of the previous 5 years. We've enhanced infrastructure and wireless network. In fact, we have a $1.3 million additional investment this year through our E-rate program that will come at the cost of about $250,000 to us, thanks to E-rate. And thanks to my team for putting that through. Presentation stations in our classrooms consist of a projection device, document camera. We now have that in all instructional spaces. Deployed one-to-one at target schools such as Sahali, Nautilus, Woodmont, Truman, Acceleration Academy, and in small ways in other schools to support blended learning, such as you heard from our student earlier tonight. Began implementation of blended learning models through the district, which I just referred to, and additional digital resources have been provided, such as Dreambox and others.
So you've often heard Dr. Campbell talk about doing all of our efforts in service of students. So really the bottom line is the technology levy funding provides opportunities for students. It provides us an opportunity to personalize the learning, provide responsive and relevant instruction, equitable access to technology, digital resources and tools, create 21st century skills, which we know will improve their opportunity to be both college and career ready, and enhance those options that are available to them. Really harness the power of the 4 C's, which are giving kids the ability to create, collaborate, think critically, and communicate. And then, of course, those STEM opportunities, which are so very important, as we note that Seattle, of course, is ranked number 8th in the world for startup ecosystems, with approximately 25,000 jobs in the STEM field opportunity for our students to move into.
Thank you. I have the opportunity to remind you about the various actions that are implemented with the pending vote of the adoption of the resolution that is in front of you tonight. So the resolution contains several components. Once that resolution is adopted, it includes the actual ballot proposition language. So part of that resolution defines the ballot proposition language that voters will see when they open their ballot in February. It sets the election date. You have one of 4 to choose from every calendar year. February 9th, 2016 is the first available special election date for school districts. This resolution sets the levy length, and it sets it to the 6 calendar years, 2017 through 2022. This is the 3rd tech levy that we've asked our voters to approve for that 6-year horizon. As mentioned previously, it continues the levy at the current amount of $4.4 million per year. And the resolution also does authorize the school district to participate in the voter pamphlet. So those are the 6 items that, or the 5 items, I'm sorry, that are specifically adopted in the resolution, besides giving us the actual authority to run the ballot proposition.
And I'd like to thank our teammate, Sally McLean, for really being integral in the penning of both our resolution and language, as well as the voter pamphlet ballot language. So for your consideration, we'd like to provide for you the final read, and we are seeking your approval. Whereas the Board of Directors of Federal Way School District number 210, King County, Washington, intend for our students to graduate with the academic knowledge and 21st century skills ready to succeed as responsible citizens. And whereas these funds will assist with the provision of equitable student access to technology tools and resources, provide teachers with updated computers and professional development, and expand and sustain a stable and reliable technology infrastructure. And whereas the technology equipment, related technology infrastructure, equipment and facilities of Federal Way School District number 210, King County, Washington, the district, are in need of improvements, expansion, renovations, and construction to meet the current and future educational program for its students. And whereas funds available to the district will be insufficient to enable the district to implement such projects. And whereas in order to support the cost these projects are found necessary by the Board of Directors, it is deemed advisable that the district district levy a tax upon all the taxable property within the district in excess of the annual tax the district is permitted by law to levy without a vote of the people. Such levy to be made for 6 years, commencing in 2017 for collection in the school years of 2016-17 through 2022-23, inclusive as authorized by Article 7, Section 2 of the State Constitution and RCW 84-52-053. And whereas the Constitution and the laws of the state of Washington require the question of whether or not such excess tax may be levied must be submitted to the qualified electors of the district for their ratification of rejection. And whereas given the conditions here and above set forth, the best interest of the district require the holding of a special election in district. Now, therefore, by the Board of Directors of the Federal Way School District, number 210, King County, Washington, as follows. And you have that in front of you. We are seeking your approval on the final read. Questions?
Thank you. Board members, any questions?
I think we've already, it's glad to have you back. But the last time Dr. Campbell did not do you justice in her presentation, but she did her best. So,
I hardly doubt that, but.
No, all kidding aside, it's good to have you back, but I just want to commend, you've already said that, just the work we've already done with the previous tech levy is great. And, what Mayberry's done has been phenomenal, and I know we are the envy of a lot of districts having someone like you doing the work that you're doing. And Sally, yet again, great getting you are expert at all this stuff, and I'm excited. I'm glad that we're continuing this on. We've had a work study on this, we've had a board meeting on it, we've had a chance to talk about it, and this is definitely the right direction to continue on this work and to really add on to it as we've talked about tonight. What this levy has and the components of it really build on what we've already done so far, and really set us up for success for the future. So I'm excited about that.
I would just like to add, it's been a total team approach. I think I want the public as well as the board to notice that we're approaching things across departments so that we have the best thinking on the table. I will say that one of the things that I'll be pressing the team to do is to have metrics that really mark not only at the end of the levy cycle, but every year what we've done, what we've accomplished, and ultimately what are those outcomes in the classrooms for our students. That will be something that we will seek to ramp up on this next go around.
I would just say too, what we've heard over the last few days, and some of us will probably mention it, it was this idea that it isn't about, it's about thinking about how we use technology and how we change our mindset and our mind shift, and that we've spent a lot of time working on connectivity, but not a lot on capacity building, and so we continually have to think about connectivity and fast and thinking in the future, but at the same time, we can't do that without providing that capacity, and that's a piece that's very, very clear, and I appreciate just the presentation and the thoughtful, I think, framing that everyone did for us as a board.
I have no questions, but I hope the audience clearly understood that, for me anyways, it helps the brightest to enrich their programs if they choose. Those that are lagging can catch up through technology. And those that may not have the resources, it's a leveler. IT is a leveler, so there's no gap in terms of being able to do one's homework because of a lack of technology. And so it helps every student across the district, so I hope that message came across. Thanks.
I think it's all been said. Just thank you. Thanks for all your work and your teamwork together to do this.
Yep.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
And now, team, I would actually introduce a motion on this resolution.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the tech levy ballot resolution 2015-20.
A motion, do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, and our last item on our agenda this evening is highlights from WSSDA. So we'd open up to board members to share their experiences for the 4 days we spent in Bellevue from Thursday through Sunday at the Washington State School Directors Association Conference.
Okay, I'll start. Attended a few caucus meetings. The large district caucus had a session for those that have close to 20,000 students and above. And one of the interesting topics was school start times. Seattle, they're using the research that shows that high school students should start later in the day and doing that, but they're proposing that the elementary students go later as well, and I think that's their sticking point because the research goes the opposite. Bellevue, on the other hand, it sounds like they're going to follow the research on both regards, keeping the elementary students early and the high school students late. Where I heard the discussion had some concerns was the middle schoolers kind of get thrown into a forced time slot based on bus availability. And so hopefully the time slot that gets worked out is suitable from what the research shows. But that was a good discussion. They also talked about facility levies, and quite a few are going in for those, and I think it would be good to maybe talk to those to find out what maybe the strategies were in terms of selecting which of the opportunities that they have in terms of the balloting to seek a levy. Also attended the Equity and Access Caucus, and there's a lot of talk about how difficult it is to discuss race, and it's a concern because there's 2 states in the entire country that have been widening the gap between the Caucasian students and the children of color in terms of their education. And you would think that maybe it's in the Deep South or that it's in the Bible Belt, but it's the 2 West Coast states of Washington and Oregon. So it was good to hear that the folks in Oregon are coming to team with us. Oregon Leadership Foundation is going to sponsor an event in May to work with WSSDA to look at policies and maybe do something as opposed to just talk about the difficulties. So I'm optimistic that things will change from talk to action as the months go forward. I attended a session on balanced governance, which talked a lot about policy governance and different models. And what I found encouraging was that the areas that they thought that balanced governance differed from the Centers for Public Education's model for 8 standards was that we're doing what this speaker was recommending from the Seattle Lutheran University. And really it has to do with how the strategic planning effort is going and how Dr. Campbell has focused on a systems view of actions. So that we're not playing whack-a-mole and hitting various symptoms as they come up, but looking at the underlying issues and going after root causes. As Dr. Pedro Noguero, a education professor, spoke to us at lunch, talked about in terms of inability to read might be the root cause in terms of defiant acts because a child doesn't want to be outed in their inability to read. And then it becomes a discipline problem and then all these different things that get acted upon, but really the root cause is fixing a child's ability to read. So hopefully our systemic view of problems will get to the root causes as has been lined out in our strategic planning effort in conjunction with the community to solve a lot of the issues that affect education. I attended a couple of sessions that had to do with liabilities and civil rights. One was run by federal lawyers and one was run by a state lawyer, talking about making sure how the school districts can ensure the rights of students. And there was a lot of dialogue in particular with regard to the rights of students who have gender identity and those that are covered under religious protections that are covered in the State Act. So good dialogue there and probably useful for policy development. Hopefully we'll be getting some feedback from WSSDA relative to how to balance the various concerns. One session on early learning, the one thing that I took away from that was the idea that perhaps we ought to look at centralizing, I don't know that it's done, centralizing enrollment for kindergartens. They felt that it could be a social media event. The parents are there, and it's like the start of school. They ride the buses all together to get to a central location to enroll, and they felt that there was great benefit in being able to give one common talk in terms of getting ready for kindergarten, making it a big family event, getting ready for school. It sounded like a great idea, so I brought that back from that session. And then I went to a cyberbullying session And I think the message that I got from the sessions that had to do not only with bullying, but IT in general, is that we really need to leverage technology. We need to embrace it. You're not going to prevent it from getting into schools. You're not going to prevent it from getting in the hands of your children. So you need to embrace it, and you have to work wisely with it. I think that was the big takeaway for me. So excellent conference for me. I enjoyed it.
Vice President Wilson?
I think as a board, we went to many different things, but we went to many things that were similar as well. And the one thing I'll just say is that as a member of the Roadmap District, one of the our 7 districts are doing what they're calling opening day for kindergarten registration. So even bigger than just a district, region-wide, have been this last year working on a single marketing and media campaign for families so that everyone knows wherever they live, kids are able to enroll at a certain day. And I think you're right, it's a huge help for and support for families. I would say again, Pedro Noguera is a name that we've mentioned before. Our staff here at Federal Way spent the day along with other districts a week before the WSSDA conference, and so it's nice to have that aligned thread coming through in the messages at the policy and the level as well as at the practice level. Also, the caucusing is always an important thing because it's an opportunity for us to talk with districts that are similar either in makeup, geographic distribution, or size. The Office of Civil Rights, it was an interesting thing, and that talked a lot about their Dear Colleague letters that send out that are oftentimes taken as law, but are in fact just interpretations of legislation. And a lot of new issues and concerns that we need to be aware of as schools moving forward, again, around gender identity and LGBTQ issues. Also, violence and bullying was another one. Also spent a session, and Director Eto was there, around having some conversation around students on school boards, because we had kind of had that conversation and begun the discussion and are interested in making sure we follow through. And so that was a great one, and there were many, many student reps at this conference that we had a chance to speak with. Had always an inspirational, motivational speaker, and that was Susan Erschler, who has climbed the 7 peaks and really was just talking about high-performing teams and what it takes to do that. And then we'll say that we were proud to have the Beamer Dance Troupe perform at lunch for the WSSDA annual conference on Friday. And they, nobody could sit in their seat, and that's, I think, what you experience when you've experienced the Beamer Dance Troupe. And it was truly reflective of the students that we serve, and we couldn't have been prouder as a board to have to watch them. And I think the other is the gentleman that closed the conference. I had heard once before, and if you haven't, you need to find him. But his name is Jeff Utek, and Jeff Utek is a gentleman who talks about technology, and just as Director Eto talks about, it's something to embrace, not something to lock up and hide, because every time you lock it up, kids are going around and finding their way through anyway. But using things like Google and Wikipedia and smartphones and all those things we see as cheating as a way to just deepen and enhance learning and allow students to be in charge of their learning in a very different way. So that's very, very exciting to me to think about that as we move forward with the tech levy, and again, our capacity and how our staff can think about allowing students that opportunity to almost be the teachers, because I think that's what it's all about. And then the other thing is really wanting to thank my board members and also board directors around the region for nominating me to the WSSDA Board of Directors, and I'm one of 2 representatives to Director Area 2, which is the largest school board area. There are 11 areas in the state, so for the first time it is really allowing us on this side of the state and in our region to have representation in a very different way. Director McAnalloy is vice chair of the Ledge Assembly, and then Angelica Alvarez, who sits on the board in Highline, was voted in as our legislative rep for Director District 2. And so really thinking about how we as board directors are making sure that the voices of our families and our students are being heard in the work that's happening at the state level. So thanks.
So I don't have too much different to share. I mean, one thing I will share is we had a session on engaging family and community members in highly diverse settings, and actually Vice President Wilson was one of the presenters, and it was nice to spend a 5-hour period really going through that and seeing the differences and sharing. I think there were probably 60 in attendance of mainly board directors, and just the different ideas of where things stand around that and how family engagement should be and how we truly support our students and our families and those differing pieces. And I can tell you that in my humble opinion, we're doing great work here in this district compared to many of our neighboring districts around the state in that area. I listened to Pedro Noguera in his keynote speech, and I was actually there the week earlier listening to him around equity and how we really begin to talk about race and dig deeper than just talking about it. We're really beginning to make changes and making sure we're supporting our students and helping them to be successful in closing the gap, not keep just having it as a buzzword, but how do we really begin to do that work. Doing Data Right was presented by Highline. Dr. Campbell and I both attended that, and unfortunately they actually talked about their plan and what they did with strategic planning and didn't really dig into data. We both kind of hoped that they would kind of share what they were doing with their data. They didn't really get there. They kind of shared what they'd done with the board and that piece, so unfortunately that wasn't what we wanted. We did do the caucus director too, and as Vice President Wilson shared, I can tell you that in each one of the committees that now exist, that there is representation out of South King County, which I can tell you when I started 2 years ago, everything was almost supported out of our north and east areas in King County. We now have representation. We have 2 of the 4 positions on the Ledge Committee, and 2 of those, as she said, it's Highline and myself representing the South End. And so we can really begin to look at the race to the top organization and really begin to do some cohesive work and hopefully collectively work about how it impacts us and our students in this area. The next thing I attended was the Federal Relations Network, and I actually can tell you that I've now been appointed as a coordinating member in the 9th Congressional District. So I will be going back to the Advocacy Institute in Washington, D.C. in January to represent the 9th and talk to our national legislators about what they're doing and how they're impacting us back here in Washington, along with that team. There are 50 of us around the state, but I will be the voice that supports the 9th Congressional District at that convening. The Ledge Committee members, we brought the new ones together. There are 24 of us total, and we have actually 9 new members that will join us in January. So there's a big change that has happened. So we began to explain to them what the work looked like and how it will be and what our 7 meetings will look like next year. And Jeff Utek, I mean, they just picked the right person to end the conference. It was amazing when we began to talk about technology and how we have to really look, and some of the things that school districts are doing, like opening up their web access at 5 p.m. to allowing students and others to have access within it and creating those hotspots, and how do we begin to look at that and creating that. And so hopefully that'll be something with our tech levy that we can begin to look at it. How do we expand that access and give those things and those opportunities to students to make sure they have access at every step that we can do for them. So that's, Dr. Campbell, did you have anything to say?
Well, like with any conference, you get so many ideas, you want to come back and do them all. And the reality is that's the deadliest danger of all, because you can't. You've got to keep a focus and think about what you are doing and how do you add 1 or 2 things so that you do something and stick with it and get it done right without overwhelming the system. One of the things that I wanted to learn more about was data sharing, because I don't think we do the job yet that we need to do. And I'm specifically interested in leading and lagging data reports that we can provide to the board so that you can have a sense of where we are in terms of progress monitoring. It wasn't as informative as we hoped, but it caused me to get a couple of books that I'm going to be reading about, because I really want to have community engaged around metric and looking at dashboards that tell you where we are in terms of accomplishing our goals. I thought that the session that Director Wilson and a couple of other folks led was really powerful. It was clear to me that the expertise we have in our own district around this area, specifically talking about how do we engage families and how do we do that in a way that is what I would say is culturally responsive. And I think if we in this district are going to truly close gaps, we've got to learn to talk about every aspect of the lives of our children when they come in our schools. If they come in and they're students of poverty, we've got to be able to talk about that. If they come in and they're students of color, we've got to be able to talk about race. If they come in our doors and they're speaking another language, we've got to talk about how we can access and reach them around ELL. If we're fumbling around that, if we can't do that and they can't bring them their whole selves, they're not going to be successful, and we're not as good as we are going to be in that area. And that's going to be something that I see us leading around across the district, and that's what our team is focused on. The last thing I'll say, and I know this isn't what happened at WSSDA, I want to thank the team. They have buckled down hard. The cabinet has just been stepping up as I've asked them to step up, and there are going to be more steps to take, but I appreciate them doing that, and I want to tell you that. I want to tell you how much I appreciate each and every one of you.
Thank you. And with that, we're adjourned.